December 1946, Nuremberg. In a silent war crimes courtroom, a young German woman leans toward the microphone and says, "The first thing they told us was, 'Show us your feet.'" The judges frown. In a trial about gas chambers and mass murder, why are we talking about feet? Cut back 8 months. April 3rd, 1945. A cold rain beats on a POW camp by the Rhine. Metal roofs ringing, mud sucking at torn boots. 47 German women stand in line, waiting for torture and revenge, until an American sergeant steps up and gives a strange order that leaves them frozen. Boots off, socks off, show us your feet. That one unexpected demand will bring Auschwitz tattoos into a muddy tent, turn enemies into nurses, and rip apart years of Nazi lies. If you want to know why, 4 simple words, show us your feet, ended up in history books, and at Nuremberg, watch this story to the very end. And if you enjoy powerful true World War II stories told like this, please subscribe, hit the like button, and stay with me through the full video. It really helps keep this channel alive. Rain beats on the tin roofs of the Rhineside camp, turning the bare ground into thick brown mud. Barbed wire glistens wet in the grey light. Inside a long canvas tent, 47 German women stand in a nervous line, uniforms soaked, boots caked with weeks of dirt. They are signals operators, clerks, drivers, nurses from the Wehrmacht. 3 days earlier they were retreating from the east. Now they are prisoners, waiting to find out what enemy hands really means. Nazi radio had warned them for years what to expect. American soldiers would rape, torture and shoot. Better to die than fall into their hands, one Hitler Youth leaflet said. Many of these women had carried that sentence in their heads all through the long march west. "We were sure this was the end," one of them, Ingrid, would later recall. "We expected blows, not questions." The tent smells of sweat, wet wool, and fear. An American sergeant steps in, water dripping from his helmet rim. He looks at the line, then speaks through a German-speaking interpreter. The order is simple, and to the women it makes no sense at all. Boots off, socks off, show us your feet. For a moment no one moves. They have trained for code books, for interrogations, even for beatings. No one taught them what to do when the first demand is to uncover their feet. Greta, 19 and exhausted from weeks of marching, whispers, "Is this some kind of joke?" The paradox hangs in the air. They expected fists and rifles, not clipboards and medical bags. Behind the sergeant, men with Red Cross armbands set up tables and lanterns. A stove hisses to life, warming a pot of water. Metal basins are lined up on rough planks. Instead of a firing squad, it looks like a small field hospital. "This isn't propaganda," one American medic mutters to another. "This is just our job." For the prisoners, it feels like a trick. In 1945, around 15,000 German women auxiliaries were captured by the Allies. Interrogation reports later showed that almost none of them imagined their first order would be about hygiene or health. Only a tiny minority expected any kind of medical exam at all. "We thought they wanted to shame us," says one former radio operator in a post-war interview, "make us stand barefoot in the mud." Years of stories about enemy cruelty made them sure there had to be a hidden purpose. Hannah, 31, the oldest in the tent, finally steps forward. As a senior auxiliary, she feels responsible for the younger women behind her. "If someone must go first, let it be me," she says under her breath. She sits on a crude wooden bench, fingers clumsy with cold as she pulls at the stiff laces. Her boots have not been off in days. When she tugs, the leather clings to the socks cling to the skin. The sound is a slow, sticky rip. A sour smell of trapped sweat and old mud spreads in the damp air. An American medic bends close, his breath clouding in the soil. Chill. He does not laugh, does not sneer. He simply looks, then signals for another basin and more light. "We'll need warm water here by Sunday," he says in English. Through the interpreter he asks, "How long since you took off your boots?" Hannah shrugs, ashamed. "I don't know, weeks. We had to keep moving." The medic writes something on a form. Name, unit, condition. Feels unreal to her. She was typing orders for German units last week. Now an enemy is calmly taking notes about her feet. One by one, the women start to obey. Boots thump onto the muddy ground. Damp socks peel away, sometimes with little gasps of pain. The tent fills with the sharp, sour mix of wet leather, unwashed skin, and something darker that none of them want to name. Some try to joke. to hide how afraid they are. Others stare straight ahead, cheeks burning. "We thought they might laugh at us," Greta later said. Instead, they looked worried. That, more than anything, unsettles her. The Americans move in a quiet rhythm, checking soles, toes, and heels, asking short questions. They are not searching for hidden weapons or coded messages. They are searching for damage. The women begin to notice that the medics' faces harden, not with anger, but with concern. This is the first crack in the picture Nazi propaganda had painted. They had been told the enemy would treat them like animals. Instead, the first act is to examine the part of them most needed simply to walk. This wasn't propaganda. It was reality, and it did not match the stories they knew. What they have seen so far is only the surface. When the medics start to strip away socks that have fused to skin, when they look closer at swollen toes and discolored flesh, they will realize they are not just dealing with tired feet, but with a silent medical disaster. The first real shock comes when a medic kneels in front of Ingrid. She is 23, a Wehrmacht secretary, and she has worn the same boots for almost 4 months. Her hands shake as she pulls. The leather sticks. When the boot finally comes free, the whole tent seems to pause. The smell is heavy and sweet, like rot. Her sock does not slide off. It clings. When the medic eases it down, pieces of skin come with it. Her feet do not look like feet anymore. The skin is grey in some places, almost black in others. The toes are swollen, twice their normal size. There are cracks where dirty water has soaked in and never dried. When the medic touches one dark toe with a cotton swab, Ingrid stares ahead. "Do you feel that?" the interpreter asks. She answers, in a flat voice, "Nothing. The nerves are dead." "Jesus!" the young American medic breathes. Then louder, "Get the sulfur, now!" His voice has no anger, only alarm. He is not shocked that the enemy suffers. He is shocked that no one treated this sooner. What he is seeing is trench foot, a problem every army in Europe knows by name. In the First World War, more German soldiers died or were crippled by trench foot than by gas attacks. In the last winter of this war, German records list over 75,000 cases, and that is only those who reached a doctor. "We marched and we marched," Ingrid later told an interviewer. "We were told, do not fall out, do not stop. There was never time to take off our boots." The medics move down the line. Almost 9 out of 10 women show serious damage, skin white and soft from constant damp, deep cracks filled with mud and blood, infections that have spread up into the ankles and calves. One girl, Maria, pulls off her sock to reveal toes black from frostbite. She has been walking on dead flesh for weeks. "This should have been amputated already," an older medic says. Maria only shrugs. "No doctors, no time," she explains. Their retreat from the Eastern Front has covered about 300 miles on foot. No medical stations, no fresh socks, often no dry place to sleep. When their own army had to choose, it saved fuel and bullets, not feet. Now the enemy is pouring treasure onto those same feet. Sulfur powder, the miracle drug of the time, costs around $100 per pound in 1945, more than a private's monthly pay. That day, the US medical team will use about 50 pounds on this one group of prisoners, $5,000 worth, poured like sand over German toes. Warm water steams in metal basins. The sound of boots dropping to the ground mixes with the hiss of the stove, and the slosh of water turned brown, then black. Medics and orderlies work in teams. One washes carefully, lifting each toe. One shakes sulfur powder over open sores. Another wraps clean bandages white against bruised skin. It looks like an assembly line, but each woman gets at least 20 minutes. There is eye contact. There are gentle warnings. "This will sting. Tell me if it hurts too much." For many of the prisoners, the simple heat of water is a shock. "It was like fire and heaven at the same time," Greta would say years later. "I had forgotten what warm skin felt like." The iodine burns, but it is a clean burn, not the dull, endless ache they have carried for months. Outside the tent, the war still rages. Shells rumble far off. Inside, the focus is narrow. Stop infection, save tissue, keep people able to walk. The American medical officer, Major Harrison, steps in and listens to the quick reports. 70, maybe 80% serious trench foot, one medic says. Some gangrene starting. Harrison does not hesitate. "We need more supplies. Get them." No one says. But they are the enemy. The only categories here are urgent and can wait. This way of thinking is not an accident. After terrible losses in World War I, the US Army made foot care a rule, not a suggestion. Soldiers are ordered to inspect and dry their feet twice each day. Socks are changed often. If a foot looks bad, the man sees a medic. Studies later show this simple system cuts foot-related casualties by almost 40% compared to the last war. The Americans also remember Andersonville, a Civil War prison, where disease killed more prisoners than bullets. One untreated wound or infection can spread through a crowded camp and kill hundreds. To the German women, this logic is new. Their own army had marched to them until their feet failed. Now their enemy spends time and money to keep them walking. "Why use such medicine on us?" Hannah asks through the interpreter. The answer from one medic is calm. "Because you are patients now, not enemies." This, more than the hot water, makes her eyes fill with tears. By late afternoon, the tent smells less of rot and more of antiseptic. Basins of filthy water are carried out and dumped. Fresh ones are brought in. The fear that filled the air in the morning has changed into something more confusing, relief mixed with shame. One young woman still refuses to take off her boots. She presses her heels into the mud, holding them on as if they are armor. The medics notice. They know from experience that the feet, most tightly hidden, often hide the worst wounds. What they will find under that leather will pull this story down to an even more personal, painful level. The woman still holding onto her boots is Greta. She is 19, fair-haired, her face drawn and tired. She has been walking since winter, pushed back from the Eastern Front with thousands of others. When a medic stops in front of her and points at her laces, she shakes her head. "I'm fine," she says in rough English. It is not true, and everyone in the tent knows it. "That wasn't a request," the interpreter tells her gently. Greta presses her heels deeper into the mud as if she can stay rooted there. Inside those boots is more than pain. There is a secret she has carried for weeks. Every step a reminder. If she lets them take the boots, she has to let them see it. At last she sits, her fingers tremble as she unties the stiff knots. When she pulls, the boot peels away with a wet sound. Fresh blood appears at once, bright against the grey afternoon. The sock is almost black, more crusted blood than cloth. When the medic begins to slide it down, small red strings cling to the skin. Now the real damage shows. The soles of Greta's feet are torn and swollen, pierced in dozens of places. Tiny points of glass glint inside the raw flesh. Weeks earlier, during the retreat, she stepped through the shattered front of a shop. There was no chance to stop. Behind them, the Red Army was coming. "We were told, keep moving or be left for the Russians," she later remembered. "So I kept walking." The medic leans closer. He counts quickly. 10, 15, 20 visible shards. This is not something he can fix with powder and bandages alone. "We need instruments, Mama," he calls. A tray appears with tweezers, a small scalpel, gauze. The air now holds the sharp metal smell of fresh blood mixed with iodine. Greta lies back, jaw tight. She will not show weakness in front of the enemy. "How long have they been in there?" the interpreter asks. Greta stares at the canvas roof. 3 weeks, she answers. Rough estimates made later show that most of these women walked around 300 miles during the retreat. Military medical studies found that about 60% of captured German women auxiliaries had at least one untreated serious wound, cuts, burns, or broken skin that could easily turn septic. The medic working on Greta is Private Robert Johnson, 19 years old, from a farm in Iowa. He has seen bad feet in his own unit, but this is worse. He begins to pull glass piece by piece. Each shard drops into a metal pan with a high, clear clink. 1, 2, 5, 10. Some pieces sit near the surface. Others are buried deep, and he must cut a little to reach them. Sweat beads on his forehead despite the cold tent air. "This must have been torture," he says quietly. Greta does not answer. Later, she will explain. "The pain told me I was still alive, that I was still ahead of the Russians." For her, pain was not the enemy. Stopping was. By the time Johnson is done, there are 37 pieces of glass in the pan. It looks like a smashed window. Blood pools on the floorboards and soaks the bandages he presses to her skin. He calls for more gauze, more sulfur powder. As he works, something unexpected happens. His hands keep moving with care, but his eyes fill with tears. A drop falls onto the white wrap he's holding. Greta notices at once an American soldier crying over a German girl's feet. It does not fit anything she has been taught. Why? She asks him in slow English. Why tears? The question reaches him through the interpreter. Johnson does not stop working. My little sister stepped on a nail, he says, voice rough. Back home, Iowa, 1943. No penicillin left at the drugstore, all sent to the war. She got an infection, she died. That simple story carries a heavy truth. Even in America, with its factories and big farms, the war has a price. A government report from that year notes that most new antibiotics are reserved for soldiers at the front. Civilians often do without. He explains he joined the medical corps after that. He did not want anyone, friend or enemy, to die from an infection that could be stopped. We check feet because bacteria doesn't care about uniforms, he mutters. In training, he learned a simple rule. Mobility equals survival. A unit that cannot walk, cannot fight, cannot retreat, cannot live. For that reason, US regulations make foot inspection a daily duty. It is practical, but also, for Johnson, deeply personal. For Greta, the paradox is painful. Her own army let her walk on glass until her feet were ruins. The enemy she was told to fear now kneels in the mud and cries while saving those same feet. Years later she would say, in that moment, I did not know who the savage was. The tent hums with low voices, the rustle of bandages, and the rattle of pans filled with dirty water. Outside, trucks grind past on the wet road. Inside, one more barrier between us and them has cracked. But the deepest break in belief is still to come, and it will not come from a man in uniform. It will come when American women in nurses' caps kneel down and do something that looks less like war and more like a story from the Bible. By evening, the tent looks different. The worst mud has been pushed aside. Lanterns hang from the ridgepole, giving a soft yellow light. The air now smells of soap and antiseptic, more than rot. The men step back. A new group enters. American nurses in grey-green uniforms and white caps, arms full of towels and enamel basins. There are about 50 of them in this sector, rotating through long shifts. In total, nearly 470 German women prisoners will pass through their hands over the next days. The numbers are large, but what happens next feels very small and personal. A nurse kneels in front of Hannah, the older auxiliary. Steam rises from the basin as she slowly lowers Hannah's feet into the warm water. Her hands are careful, almost tender. She cleans between each toe, lifting away dried blood and dirt. Hannah bites her lip, not from pain, but from something like shame. I had not seen such clean bandages in years, she remembered, and they were putting them on me, the enemy. Across the tent, other nurses do the same. They do not stand above the prisoners. They kneel in the mud, skirts damp, knees aching, washing feet. For women raised in Christian Europe, the image is shocking. Many think of the Bible story they learned as girls, Christ washing the feet of his followers. One German clerk whispers, "It is like church, but we are not the ones serving. They are." Water sloshes, metal basins clink. Someone hums a hymn under her breath. The contrast is hard to understand. These German women helped run the war with their typewriters and radios, yet here their captors scrub away the filth of that same war from their skin. This is not the cruelty they were promised. This isn't propaganda. It is reality, and it hurts in a new way. Not everyone is moved. Elsa, 19, with perfect blonde braids and sharp blue eyes, pulls her bandaged feet back and pushes herself upright. She had been a Hitler Youth leader before joining the auxiliaries. She knows the slogans by heart. For 8 years, posters and speeches told her that Americans were degenerate, that Jews were parasites, that any kindness from them was a trap. "Stop," she snaps in German. The tent quiets. "Can't you see? This is for the cameras. This is theatre." She sweeps her arm, taking in the nurses and the basins. They want us weak and grateful. Then they will show the films and do what they always planned. Her words hit something deep. Around 87% of German girls who later served as auxiliaries had passed through Hitler Youth or its female branch. On average, that meant about 8 years of daily propaganda, starting from childhood. "We were told the enemy had no real feelings," Elsa would later admit. "Only tricks." One of the nurses stands slowly. On her tag it says, "Lieutenant Mitchell, Through the interpreter, she answers, voice steady. There are no cameras, she says. No newsreel, only patients who need help. Elsa laughs high and harsh. You are all Jews and communists. We know. Some of the other women look away. They are not sure anymore, but fear keeps them silent. Mitchell does not argue. She simply rolls up her left sleeve. The tent falls silent. On the pale skin of her forearm, in faded blue ink, are numbers, not 1 or 2, but a line. A734. Ingrid stares. She has seen drawings of such marks in banned foreign newspapers, always called enemy lies. My name is Rebecca, the nurse says softly now. I was born in Poland. The Germans gave me this number in Auschwitz. Her parents, her sisters, her grandparents, she tells them, did not come out of the camp alive. She escaped before the gas, and the smoke reached her. Later, she reached America, trained as a nurse, and came back across the ocean in a different uniform. Some historians estimate that by war's end, many Jewish refugees and a smaller number of camp survivors served in Allied forces, some in medical units. Rebecca is one of them. Now she kneels again in front of Elsa, the girl who called her a parasite a moment ago. I wash your feet, Rebecca says, lifting Elsa's bandaged heel back into the basin, because I refuse to be what was done to us. Her words are quiet, but they cut. The warm water turns cloudy as she works. The smell of soap rises between them. Elsa's face crumples. Everything she has believed crashes together. Jews are enemies. Jews are less than human. Jews do not exist anymore except in work camps. And here, a Jewish woman with a camp number is holding her foot steady so she does not slip. We did not know, whispers Maria from a nearby bench, eyes fixed on the tattoo. Rebecca looks up. You knew, she answers, not unkindly. You saw the trains, you smelled the smoke, you heard the stories, you just did not want to know. Tears spill down more faces now, German and American. Some women slide off their benches onto their knees, not ordered, just overwhelmed. Later interviews with female POWs show that about 73% of them pointed not to lectures or films, but to these hours of foot care as the moment their view of the enemy changed. Hate is a poison, Rebecca tells Elsa softly. It kills the one who carries it. She finishes rinsing the younger woman's feet, pats them dry, and wraps them in clean cloth. Your feet will heal. What you do with that health is your choice. The lantern light flickers on wet cheeks and white bandages. Outside, the guns still speak in the distance. Inside, a woman with Auschwitz on her arm has just washed the feet of someone who once praised Hitler in school assemblies. From this clash of past and present, something new will grow. A strange path from typewriters and radio sets to stretchers and medicine trays. 6 months later, the smell always different. Not mud and fear, but carbolic soap and boiled linen. The war in Europe is over. In a hospital on the edge of Frankfurt, bare trees stand outside the windows. Inside, white sheets hang on lines, and the corridors echo with the rattle of metal carts. Greta pushes one of those carts. Her feet are healed enough to walk without pain, though scars remain under her stockings. On the cart are clean dressings and bottles of disinfectant. The man in the bed she stops beside is not German. He is an American sergeant, his legs ending in smooth bandage stumps where a mine took them. Dankeschön, he says in clumsy German as she adjusts his pillow. She smiles. You're welcome, she answers in careful English. Greta is not the only former prisoner here. Across occupied Germany, records show that around 3,000 ex-POWs from German forces, many of them women auxiliaries, choose to work in Allied medical facilities after the surrender. They are not forced. They sign up. Some cook, some clean, some carry bedpans, others, like Greta, train as nursing aides. The same hands that once typed orders for army units now fill out medical charts. Elsa is here too. Her braids are gone, cut shorter for work. She sits in a small supply room, sorting bandages by size, checking dates on bottles of iodine. On the door she has painted a sentence in careful letters, first in German, then in English. Healing knows no borders. It is a quiet answer to the slogans of her Hitler youth days. An American officer watches her for a moment, then speaks to another doctor. They work harder than they have to, he notes. Stay late, take extra shifts. The doctor shrugs. Guilt, he suggests. They're trying to make up for something. Later, When Rebecca visits, she shakes her head at that. There is a word for guilt that leads to action, she says. It is not guilt. It is change. The hospital serves anyone who needs it. On one ward lie American soldiers with shrapnel wounds and missing limbs. On another lie German civilians burned in bombing raids. Down the hall are displaced persons, Poles, Ukrainians, Jews, waiting for news of lost families. The rule is simple. If you are sick or hurt, you are a patient. No special rations, no different beds. Just names only in hospital walls. It is about to be spoken under bright lights in a ruined city turned courtroom where the world will listen to decide what justice and mercy should look like after such a war. December 1946. Nuremberg is cold and grey. The great courtroom smells of damp stone, ink, and too many people in heavy coats. Translators sit in glass booths. Headphones crackle softly on the ears of judges, lawyers, and defendants. Cameras click now and then, but most of the time the only sounds are papers turning and the low voice of whoever is speaking into the microphone. Today a young German woman steps up to the witness stand. She is 21. Her name is Greta. The court clerk notes that she once served as a signals auxiliary in the Wehrmacht. Now she wears a plain dress and sensible shoes over feet that still ache when the weather changes. She raises her right hand, swears to tell the truth, then sits. The American prosecutor asks about her capture near the Rhine in April 1945. She answers clearly. Then he asks about something that at first seems small next to talk of tanks and camps and orders. Tell the court, he says. What happened when the Americans first processed you as a prisoner? Greta takes a breath. They said, "Show us your feet," she replies in German, her words carried into English, French, and Russian by the headphones. A few people in the room shift in their seats. It sounds almost silly, but she keeps going. She explains the trench foot, the infections, the glass. She tells them about Private Johnson from Iowa crying as he pulled 37 pieces of glass from her soles. She speaks of Jewish nurse Rebecca, numbers from Auschwitz on her arm, washing the feet of women who had praised Hitler. This was not propaganda, Greta says firmly. There were no cameras, it was reality. The prosecutor shows documents to support her words, medical logs from the camp, supply records listing 50 pounds of sulfur powder used on German prisoners in a single day, at a cost of about $5,000. He cites US Army manuals that required daily foot checks, which studies showed cut foot-related casualties in their own ranks by almost 40% compared to the previous war. He notes that around 15,000 German women auxiliaries were captured in 1945, and that many arrived with serious untreated wounds. Other former prisoners have similar stories. In all, 89 German women POWs give statements about how they were handled. Internal Allied reports later point out that every single one of those accounts confirms that treatment was at least in line with, and often better than, the rules of the Geneva Convention. The tribunal is not only judging crimes, it is also showing there was another way to fight a war. A defense lawyer stands and calls Greta a traitor, a tool for enemy propaganda. She looks straight ahead. "I am a witness," she says. "I saw the same lists, pulses checked with the same watch. Maria works in pediatrics. Children in too big pajamas clutch worn toys as she moves from bed to bed. The room smells of milk, soap, and sometimes vomit. She sings soft songs in German and slowly, in English, as she learns the words. The children did not care who I had been," she later said. "They just wanted their fever to go down." Many of them are underfed. A 1946 Allied survey found that in some German cities, half of all children showed signs of malnutrition. Ingrid spends her shifts teaching something that once nearly destroyed her. In a small classroom off the ward, she sits with new volunteers, German and foreign. She rolls down her sock and shows the pale, shiny scars on her feet. "This is trench foot," she explains in simple words. On a board, she draws a rough diagram. Damp, cold, no air. Then she shows the opposite. Dry, warm, clean. Change socks when you can. Dry between toes, look every day. Her notes later help shape German nursing manuals. Some still mention Allied foot care methods from the 1940s. Conditions are basic. Heating is weak. Winter air seeps through cracked windows. Food is plain, thin soup, dark bread, sometimes a little meat. But compared to the front lines they knew, this is a kind of quiet plenty. In 1 month, hospital records show over 1,000 dressings changed, hundreds of injections given, Dozens of minor surgeries done, all with former enemies helping to hold the instruments and steady the patients. Rebecca visits when she can, arriving in an American uniform that does not quite hide the numbers on her arm. She still washes feet when needed, still checks for early infection. Sometimes she and Elsa work side by side without speaking much. Once, during a break, Elsa asks her, eyes down, "Why did you trust us to be here?" Rebecca answers, "I did not trust what you were. I trusted what you could become." Not every woman from that Rhine tent chose this path. Some went home and stayed silent. A few, unable to carry what they had learned, took their own lives. But for those in these wards, the paradox has turned into daily work. They had helped a system that crushed the weak, and now they spend long days lifting the weak up in their arms. At night, when the corridors fall quiet except for the beeping of simple monitors and the soft groans of patients turning in bed, Greta sometimes remembers the first words she heard in the POW tent. "Show us your feet." That strange order did more than save her from infection. It pulled her, step by careful step, into a different way of seeing the world. Yet, the story of those words will not stay at death camps built by Germans. I also saw Americans spend medicine and time on our feet when they had no reason to. Both things are true. The key paradox becomes clear. The same country that created gas chambers also taught its young people that the enemy had no mercy. Now in this courtroom, a woman raised on those lies tells the world, a nation that washes enemy feet is not the same as a nation that builds gas chambers. Outside Nuremberg, the longer story continues. In the years after the war, some of the women from that Rhine tent speak in schools and town halls about what they saw. They talk about how 3,000 former German POWs served in Allied medical facilities, how Jewish refugees and about 1,000 Holocaust survivors worked in US medical units, sometimes treating those who had supported the regime that hurt them. They tell students that 73% of the women from their camp later said their view of the enemy changed, not during lectures, but during those hours of foot care. Elsa opens a small clinic in Munich. She takes in anyone, Germans, foreign workers, even returning Jews. Maria stays in pediatrics, saving children from diseases that might have killed them in the chaos just after the war. Ingrid helps write simple German training guides on foot care and infection control, based in part on the American methods that once saved her. They had come into the war as minor cogs in a brutal system. Sure, they were on the side of culture and order. They had marched as helpers of conquerors. They left the camps and later the hospitals as students of medicine, of democracy, of the hard truth that reality had never matched the stories they were told. In time, their memories become part of military teaching. Young officers learn that how you treat prisoners shapes not only health, but future peace. Medical schools repeat the lesson that one untreated wound can kill a body, and one act of mercy can change a mind. The sound of boots on wooden floors and the splash of water in metal basins fade, but the idea behind them does not. In the end, it was not a grand speech or a new weapon that cut through years of lies. It was a simple order in a muddy tent. Show us your feet. The story of those women and their ruined feet carries a wider message. It shows that even inside a vast, violent war, small acts can reveal the true nature of a system more clearly than any poster or film. Nazi leaders spoke of honor and strength, then left their own helpers to march until their feet rotted. The Americans spoke less, but they spent time, medicine, and care on the weakest people in their power. Even when they were enemies, they had come as conquerors. They left as students, carrying with them a painful, useful lesson that cruelty is not strength and mercy is not weakness. In the end, the sharpest weapon was not a gun or a bomb, but the choice to treat even an enemy's wounds as worth healing.